Alright, welcome back to the Supercoach Nuff channel. In this video we're going to start looking at some NFL fantasy and start by looking at a tier list of running backs. So for those that are new to the concept of NFL fantasy, generally it's done in a draft format, so unlike Supercoach and fantasy, I guess because in the American system they use drafts, so it's the familiar format to most Americans. There is actually a Super Coach style game available on Sports Deck, which when it's open we will definitely get on the channel and put together a little league. But also hoping to get a draft league off the ground this year because it is a different way of playing fantasy sports. Only being able to have access to certain players, but then being able to trade and find some different sort of value players before everyone else. In Supercoach, for example, Nathan Cleary's just absolutely gone off. So those who don't already have him are going to bring him in. And basically having someone like Nathan Cleary is more of a, just trying to level the playing field rather than try to gain an advantage. So the draft format with the different players is a nice way to go. So I'll include the league invite in the description. I'll talk a little bit more about it at the end of this video and the subsequent videos. But as I said, we'll kick off by looking at running backs. So in my opinion, and a lot of opinions, running back is probably the key position in fantasy because they usually offer, at the premium end at least, a dual threat of being able to run the ball, obviously, which gets you points, but also getting points for catching passes. So, they're the sort of players that we're targeting, are the ones that, not only run the ball well, but do open themselves up to catch and create targets. And so I guess the number one in the S tier, without too much argument, is Christian McCaffrey. He plays for the San Francisco 49ers. He's probably been the running back one for the last 5 years or so. I know when I started playing about 3 years ago, he was coming off some injuries, and there was a little bit of concern about him. But he was still, I guess, looking at the experts, which is, I guess, I was very heavily leaning on back then. Still do a lot to this day, to be fair. So just a little side note, another great reason to play NFL fantasy is because there is so much information available for free around it. It's super easy to follow and have a go. But yeah, I got him in, and between him and a player I'll talk about in a little bit, they basically got me to the promised land in my first season. Probably got me hooked after that. I haven't done as well since, probably trying to outsmart myself. But this year's new year. He almost sort of stands in a tier on his own because of his elite ability to run, catch passes, do all the things that we love. But I will throw a couple more here, just I guess to save a bit of space. There's only 5 tiers available. I can create more, but it won't really fit in the screen too well, if I'm being honest. So I'm going to throw in Breece Hall as probably the number 2 running back in my opinion. So I think he's in his 3rd year, which is, I guess, when you start to see a lot of these guys really go off. Has been plagued by injury, so I think the back half of his rookie year and the first half of last year, he had like an ACL injury, and the first half of last year was recovery. But, he should be back to full fitness now. Aaron Rodgers is the quarterback there, if you know anything about quarterbacks. If not, we'll talk about them a bit later in this series. But he had an unfortunate injury in like the first sort of minutes of the first round last year. So they were without a quarterback. Excuse me. I'm trying my best to push through this man flu. But with him back, I think the Jets will be looking really good. And I think Breece Hall will be one of the main beneficiaries of that. So I've got him as RB2. And I will also throw Bijan Robinson in the elite S tier. I guess a similar sort of pattern. They do have an upgraded quarterback this year. He's in his second year, so he was a rookie last year and was very highly touted. Um, Atlanta did have a pretty run heavy offense, but they did sort of split the workload between him and Tyler Algier, who might appear somewhere on this list. Um, in saying that, with the upgraded quarterback, I think they'll go to more pass heavy offense. And he is the sort of player that can catch and make meters from the passing game as well. So I've got him as my elite or third option in the elite tier. And I think, that's generally consensus. As I said, some people might put a gap from CMC down to the other two. But in general, that's where most people are heads at her in terms of top three. So if you can nab one of these three guys, you're pretty well set at the start of your draft. After that, on the next tier, and this is where the order might change up a bit. I'm just trying to decide who I want to do first. Maybe just the first name that pops up that I can see. But Jonathan Taylor from the Indianapolis Colts. So he was the other guy that I had alongside CMC my first year. Got him super cheap in excuse me. We do an auction draft, so you can actually buy the players you want, which is pretty cool. But I had him as one of my sort of backup running backs. He ended up being running back one that year. Since then, had a little issue with injury. And last year, there was some contract dispute issues as well. So, probably drifted a bit out of people's thoughts, but, they should have their starting quarterback, Anthony Richardson, back this year as well. It'll be interesting to see how they work together because Richardson is a running quarterback. But Taylor can also catch passes. They don't have a lot in terms of the wide receiver room. So I think, he could become a viable target. So I'm happy to put him in the A tier. The next one I'll go with, and probably a fairly controversial one, is Saquon Barkley. If I can get him onto the board, get after Jonathan Taylor. So Saquon played for the New York Giants previously and was pretty much their main man. He's going over to the Philadelphia Eagles this year, which is a much better offensive team. And I think, he does offer that elite dual threat with the running and the passing. They may not rely on his running as much for touchdowns because they do have Jalen Hurts, who is, as you'll see in the quarterback video, my favorite fantasy player for that reason. But I think, just being on a better team means that he won't be as targeted, which, he can then free up and, show his ability to get it done. So I've got him at number 5. At number 6, I've got to give some respect to his efforts last year, but Kyren Williams, pretty unheralded. I think he was the sort of backup at the start of the season in the LA Rams running back room, and then injuries sort of took over, and he elevated to starter, and he just absolutely killed it all year. So, probably, what we've said about these other guys, he's in that same category, maybe just that slightly lesser extent, which is why I've got him at 6. And I'll just have a quick look at my notes. Who else do I want in this section? Yeah, let's go one more. So, it might be a little bit of a gap here, but Jahmyr Gibbs, sort of copy and paste everything we've said about these other guys. He offers the dual threat. Probably his limiting upside is a bit similar to Bijan. He has a split backfield with David Montgomery. But, again, being a second-year player similar to Bijan means that they might start gradually giving him more workload, particularly in the red zone or the final 20 meters, which, increases the likelihood of touchdowns and that upside scoring. So we'll drop down a tier from here, and I'm going to put a player a bit higher than a lot of the others would have him, but Alvin Kamara. So, I guess the other guys on this tier will be fairly similar, but I guess Alvin Kamara does offer this upside that we've talked about with, elite pass catching skill as well as being able to run the ball. Just probably the New Orleans Saints offense isn't quite as elite as these other options that we've talked about. So for that reason, I've had to drop him down a tier. But I think he's one that a lot of people sleep on because the Saints offense isn't that heralded. But definitely one that I'm keen to try and draft for a bit of value this season. Next up, we've got Derrick Henry. So Derrick Henry is a fantasy beast of the past, um, making a switch to Baltimore. So it'll be interesting to see how he works with Lamar Jackson, who is another rushing quarterback. Um, but I think it probably is an upgrade from where he was in Tennessee. So there is an argument he could slide up here. It's probably his age that a lot of people have him in the next tier below. He is a bit older, and as you get older, you get a little bit slower. Injuries start to catch up, um, but it could be a situation where they sort of unlock each other. So happy to put him in the B level tier. Um, where's our next guy? Down the bottom, perhaps. There is Travis Etienne. Get him up here in the B tier. So Travis Etienne, sort of again very much profiles like these other elite level running backs, where he's in a team where he can run and catch passes. Probably just like Kamara, a little bit below in terms of their firepower. Although if Trevor Lawrence ever lives up to his promise, then Travis Etienne could be the beneficiary of that, and definitely be in the top sort of, well, easily top 10 conversation, which is where I've got him listed here. Next one, Isaiah Pacheco from the Chiefs. So obviously back-to-back champions, the Kansas City Chiefs. A lot of their stuff does go around Pat Mahomes, but Isaiah Pacheco. That's the wrong one. I've just realised. I'll swap him out. I don't know who Isaac Guerrero is or whoever. Sorry, I just saw the I and went, that's him. Excuse me. So Isaiah Pacheco, I think he's fourth year now, third or fourth year, but you can see over his time that he has progressed more and more in this offense, which is elite. So definitely, one probably doesn't quite have the pass catching upside of the other guys, mostly because Mahomes just spreads it around so much. You can never really nail down a receiver, with the exception of Travis Kelce, who we'll talk about in the tight end video. But yeah, Pacheco is definitely a top 12 type candidate, so you can comfortably bring him in to your fantasy teams. The next guy is another one that's been moved. There's a lot of movement in the running back rooms this year, but Joe Mixon, always really a solid guy. Probably should push him up here. Even could sneak up here if I'm being honest. But has moved to the Houston Texans, who have made a couple of big moves in the off season. So looking like they're really pushing for a playoff run this year. They've got the young quarterback CJ Stroud, who carved up last year. A couple of rookie wide receivers in Tank Dell, Nico Collins, but then they've added Mixon and also Stephon Diggs, formerly of the Buffalo Bills. And they also do have Dameon Pierce, who was a highly touted running back rookie. So, but Joe Mixon's just a guy who's super reliable. He's never sort of in the conversation for RB1, but he's always in the top 12. So if you miss out on these elite guys and you're looking for a solid quarterback that'll finish up in the top 10, I actually think Joe Mixon is another value guy alongside Alvin Kamara. Excuse me. Are we going to drop a tier or? Yeah, I think we will after this point. So I guess from here we're looking at guys that are fairly solid, but sort of have that limiting upside. Starting with James Cook from the Buffalo Bills. So, pretty much the number one running back there. But Josh Allen, the quarterback, does like to run, which obviously then limits his upside. So, James Cook is comfortably in that A tier. Probably the next one, and a lot of people would have him a bit higher. But Devon Achane plays for the Miami Dolphins. Um, he had some really massive games last year. And if you were on him, you were absolutely cheering. It's probably just one of those things where he can't reproduce those numbers, so he will sort of regress a bit. So he's probably a player I'd put on the avoid list myself. I'm happy to let someone else pick him up if it means I can get to Mixon or Kamara, someone like that. Who these guys are probably actually going below Achan in drafts at the moment. So obviously, if you do like the upside play, here's your guy, high risk, high reward. Um, but definitely, one I'm looking to pass on in drafts. Next, we'll go with Josh Jacobs, which I guess a couple of my mates might laugh at. So I got stuck with him in the big auction draft last year, mostly because I was drafting on my phone and we were at the pub, so I used my phone to order a drink and didn't realize I would go on to auto draft while I was doing that. So I paid more than what I would like to anyway. He's not a bad player. It's just I didn't want to pay that much of my budget for him that I did. Couple of lessons in that, but that's fine. But he's moving to Green Bay this year, where traditionally they do, use a running back pretty well. Um, has been elite in the past, but not expecting massive here. But I mean, if you got him in a snake draft around this point, probably wouldn't be too disappointed. Um, find someone else on my list. Where is he? Kenneth Walker. So we'll throw Kenneth Walker in here too. A little bit of competition in Seattle with Zach Charbonnet. So, maybe even, it might be a bit lower, but I wanted to fit a few more names here on this list. But yeah, he's pretty solid. His biggest issue is injuries. And as I said, there's a little bit of competition there. So, yeah. I guess once we get to this point, there's little question marks around all these guys, so it's fine. I'll throw David Montgomery in here. So also plays for the Lions. So the first sort of double up in terms of the team. As I said, Montgomery seems to take a lot of the what they call red zone plays, which is close to the goal line. So a little bit more bigger and powerful than Gibbs, who's a bit quicker and, as we said, a bit more of a better pass catcher. So they do use these guys pretty well in tandem. But with how good the offense is for the Detroit Lions, there is plenty of fantasy points for both. So, if you can get Montgomery around this point, you're doing pretty well. Another one who I'm not overly, or a couple, I guess I'll throw in. Or do we go down another? Oh, is there anyone else there? No, we'll go down to the D tier, or will we? I might throw Aaron Jones in here too, just as a bit of a smoky, probably going a little bit later in a lot of drafts. Um, but has moved from Green Bay, so Josh Jacobs has essentially taken his spot. He's moved to the Vikings, where I think he will be the clear running back one. They sort of used a split system with him and AJ Dillon in Green Bay previously. But I think, with not as much competition now, I think Aaron Jones could actually be a smoky one that slides up into this C tier. Yeah, so then I think I'm happy to drop down to the last tier. So a couple of guys that are very similar that I'll put in if I can find them because they keep moving every time I move a player up. Is Ramondre Stevenson, Devin Singletary. So essentially, workhorse type running backs, but don't play on the best teams. The Patriots and the Giants are probably going to struggle this year. So they'll do a job, but they definitely probably won't. I'll say definitely they probably won't interrupt their top 12 sort of rankings. So they'd be your RB2s at best. So who else? I'll just go. Have I missed anyone? I feel like I've missed someone. No, got 11. I might just start going in the same order as it's on this list here. So the likes of DeAndre Swift, who's moved to the Chicago Bears, Rashad White from the Bucks, and Zamir White from the Raiders. So I guess particularly with the Whites, they're both they're clear running back ones in their team, but again, probably just maybe Rashad should be more there, on the top end of this, but probably just doesn't offer the upside of some of the other guys. Um, Whereas someone like a Swift, he'll be sharing. There's like three running backs at Chicago. He's known as more of a pass catcher, which is why he is in this conversation. He does offer that upside. Excuse me, but just doesn't have the percentage of the snaps to push up. Raheem Mostert, so I guess another dual team with Devon Achane, bit similar to the Montgomery role, seem to get a lot of the touchdowns in the red zone. And Miami do have a high-powered offense, so there should be a lot of points on offer. But yeah, I guess you are relying on those touchdowns. There's not the out and out workload. Um, Zach Moss at the Bengals moved there this year, sort of taking over from no, not sorry, Joe Mixon moved out. So Zach Moss has moved in. He's sort of shown he can do a bit with the RB1 opportunity, which he's actually got from the start of the season now. Last year he was behind Jonathan Taylor at the Colts, and then when Taylor got injured, he stepped up and did pretty well. So, you could include him in there. Najee Harris is another one I'll throw in, and I'll probably put Jalen Warren not right next to him. So, again, sort of split backfield there at the Steelers, but definitely an upgrade at QB this year with Russell Wilson coming across. So I think Najee Harris has shown he can catch passes in the past, but from reports, it sounds like Jalen Warren's pretty handy at it too. They just haven't had anyone to pass it to. So, if you can get either one of these guys about here, that would be fine. James Conner's another good option at the Cardinals, although they did trade in Trey Benson as a rookie this year. So it'll be interesting to see how they split. James Conner is a bit older, but has shown he can do it in the past. And then after that, just going through the list, I'll throw Nick Chubb in here. So coming back from really bad ACL, but if you can sort of stash him in your bench for most of the season, he could be sort of that difference maker in the like back end, so your finals series, that sort of thing. But definitely not one to worry about too much at the start of the season. Austin Eckler, I'll quickly get on as well. So has been elite in the past, but is moving to Washington with splitting the backfield with Brian Robinson. Rookie quarterback Jaden Daniels likes to run the ball as well. So it'll be interesting to see how they use him. I'm not expecting him to be elite, but if he's still on the board at this point, I'd probably just take a punt on him. And I guess this is the stage where you can take a punt on some guys, because they're all pretty interchangeable at this point. I think I've covered all that after that. So I mean, that's probably if you can fit Eckler in there. But that's probably the running back tier list. Once you get to these guys, like I said, they're all probably going to be on your waiver wires and that sort of thing. Maybe it's a bit disrespectful to Tony Pollard. He's not bad. Ezekiel Elliott's another starter at the Cowboys. He's done a bit in the past. And there is some other starters that are still here that I haven't thrown in. Like probably Chuba Hubbard will start because Brooks, the rookie, he might be one to stash, but sounds like he's injured for the start of the year. So maybe we can do some sleepers and stuff later in the closer to the time after a bit of preseason. But yeah, so if I just quickly go through, we've got 7, 12, 18. Yeah, so I mean, if you've got two running backs in your league, you're playing 12 players, you're probably going to have these guys in your starting lineup. So, if you can land one of these elite guys in the top two tiers, that'd be great. If not, there's a bit of value in the middle. And then, if you get one of these other guys as your running back two, or even your extra one on your bench, you're doing pretty well. But I'll wrap the video up there. As I said, this is the first in the series, mostly just to sort of introduce people to some of the key players, but also to pump up the league. As you can see, aiming to do the draft on September the 2nd, Monday night. I think that's the Monday night before the season starts, so it'll give everyone as much time to do the intel and that sort of thing before week one, and then we can get stuck into it. So, if you're interested, as I said, I'll put the league invite code below. Click on that, jump in, set up your team name and all that. And if you want to start playing around with the pre-drafts, you can. I might even go through that at a date closer to the time if you're unsure on that. So yeah, if you've got any questions, comments, thoughts, feel free to add them below this video. Give us a like if you enjoy the NFL content. Subscribe for all the fantasy sports content on the channel. And other than that, we'll catch you in the next one.